Hello and welcome to my tutorial all about how to make a macrame feather or leaf shape. This particular ornament is made only from rope and makes a pretty decoration on its own or as part of a mobile, garland or larger piece of wall art. For this project you will need some rope, a pair of scissors, a ruler, a disappearing or magic fabric pen, although that's not 100% vital, a piece of paper and a pencil, a wire slicker brush or a fine comb, and a couple of optional extras are a piece of fabric like calico, canvas or stiff felt in a matching colour, and some strong clear drying glue. You only need the fabric and the glue if you want to add a bit of support to the back of your ornament. In terms of what rope to use, I personally used some 5mm twisted cotton cord or macrame rope in a natural beige colour. You can use the same technique with other forms of rope, like chunky knitting yarn or twine. As long as it can be unravelled and brushed, it can be used. Also feel free to experiment with rope in more than one colour. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we need to do is make the stem of the leaf or feather shape. To do this, I cut a 70cm length of rope. Fold this length of rope in half and tie a simple knot near the top to form a small hanging loop. Please note that during this tutorial I'm going to be telling you the measurements that I use to make my leaf shape, and obviously you can change the measurements to fit your preferences. The leaf shape that I made ended up being about 31cm high and 23cm wide. We then need to add strands of rope to this stem in order to build up the shape of the leaf or feather. There are two different ways to do this, so I'm going to show you them both and you can choose your favourite. The first method involves making square or reef knots. This method is perhaps quicker and a bit more symmetrical, but it makes the stem bulkier. Method 2, which is the method I chose to use in the end, is perhaps a bit more uneven but creates a narrower stem. So for method 1, the first thing you need to do is cut lengths of rope to fold in half and attach to the stem. I cut out 18 lengths, each measuring 35cm long. Take one of these pieces of rope, fold it in half and lay it perpendicular to the stem. I'm going to refer to this piece as piece A. Place piece A on the right hand side so that the loop end points left. Then push the loop end underneath the stem. Then take another piece of rope, fold it in half and place it on the left hand side of the stem so that it's facing in the opposite direction to A. I'll refer to this piece as piece B. Guide the loop end of B up through the loop of A. Then take the legs of piece A and guide them up through the loop end of piece B. Hold the pair of legs on each side and pull in opposite directions to tighten. As you may notice, the knot on the rope is not symmetrical, as there's a vertical piece of rope on the left but not on the right. So it's best to add the next two lengths of rope using the same technique but as a mirror image. So to start with, this time you would place a folded piece of rope, piece A, perpendicular to the stem, but it would be on the left hand side of the stem with the loop end pointing right. As before, the loop end should lie underneath the stem. Then the rest of the steps are followed as before, but you're just working in the opposite direction. You would then continue like this down the stem, alternating direction to create a more balanced look. And now we move on to method 2, which involves making cow hitch knots. As in method 1, you will first need to cut out the shorter lengths of rope, in my case 18 lengths, each measuring 35cm long. Take one of these pieces of rope, fold it in half and then lay it perpendicular to the stem so that the looped end points left. This rope should lie underneath the stem. Next, fold the looped end back over the stem. Then pull the legs of the rope up through this loop. And finally, pull the legs to the right to tighten. You may notice that this knot doesn't look symmetrical. So for attaching the next piece of rope, we'll do the same technique but in the opposite direction. So take another piece of rope, fold it in half and then lay it perpendicular to the stem so that the looped end points right this time. Next, fold the looped end back over the stem, then pull the legs of the rope up through this loop. And finally, pull the legs to the left to tighten. And continue like this down the stem, alternating the direction of the knot each time. But before we end up knotting the entire stem, we need to decide where we're going to stop. To do this, you'll need to decide on the shape of the leaf or feather. Whatever length of fluffy rope you want at the bottom of the shape is the length of the stem you'll need to leave unknotted. I wanted to leave about 9 centimeters unknotted, so I marked the stem with my disappearing fabric pen 9 centimeters from the bottom. I then continued adding pieces of rope to the stem until I reached this mark. Now that we've completed the knotting, it's time to unravel all of the strands of rope. So all you need to do is untwist each piece of rope right up to the stem and separate all of the individual strands. You'll need to do this for every piece of rope. Then use a slicker brush or a fine comb to separate the strands even more, and this will give it a more fluffy, even look. The next step is an optional step, and it depends if you want to add a backing to your shape or not. The reason you may want to add a backing is to add support to the fibres so that they don't droop as much. I personally used a piece of calico, but if you wanted to hold the fibres more solidly, a stiff felt would be best. So cut out a piece of the backing fabric so that it covers as much of the back of the leaf as possible. But you want to leave a border of uncovered fibres around the sides. This is because we'll be cutting the leaf shape out in the next step and we don't want to uncover any of this fabric during that process. Then glue the fabric in place onto the stem and the fibres and leave to dry. Before you do this, make sure that the fibres are all straight and neatly brushed and there's no gaps in them. And the last step is to cut out the shape. This is the point where you can choose if you want more of a banana leaf shape or a thin feather shape. I first cut the fibres back to where the shortest fibres finished. Then I cut 1/2 into the shape that I wanted. Once you've cut one side how you like it, trace this shape onto a piece of paper and cut it out. Use this piece of paper as a template to cut the other half in exactly the same shape. After all, you want the result to be as symmetrical as possible. Then just keep brushing and trimming until you're happy with it. And that's it, your ornament is now finished. I really hope you've enjoyed this project and thank you very much for watching.